And welcome back. Our guest tonight is Jim Marrs. He is a historian and best-selling author of many works, including his latest, Our Occulted History. He joins us now in studio to talk about his works. Thanks for joining us today, Jim.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, I hear you have the recent analysis on the Cyprus situation. Well, what have you come across?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at it, and of course, you know, they shut down the ATMs, they closed the banks, so you can't get your money back. And they were proposing like almost a 9.9, a 10% tax on your savings.
On your money?
Yeah, on the money you put in there to save. They're gonna rob it. But I think there's more to it than that. Apparently, Cyprus has been a tax shelter and a tax haven for a lot of wealthy Russians, and this could be part of the kind of the sub rosa covert nouveau Cold War that's going on, and Russia, I think, understands it better than we do. I know Cyprus went to Russia and tried to ask for a big loan to try to pull them out, and they said no, because I think they understand what's going on. But to me, this is all, I think it's a practice run. I think they're practicing to see how the people in Cyprus and how the European Union people handle this and how they perceive it and how they react to it. And if they're able to get away with this, then I think you're going to see this in other countries.
Jim, do you think there's any reason why this location was chosen, Cyprus?
Well, again, because they had some heavy money there from the Russian oligarchs, and I think that number one, they could get their hands on a lot of money, and number two, again, this was a swipe at Russia. Russia's always been a target for the international bankers because both under the czars and under the communists, they would not play ball and would not create a central bank and would not have, you know, we have a central bank now. It's called the Federal Reserve System.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not federal.
It's neither federal nor does it have any reserves. And they don't call it a central bank, except actually they've begun to. That's pretty interesting. All my life, they never referred to the Federal Reserve System as a central bank. But in the last 10 years or so, just on the news, you'll hear, yeah, the central bank today. So we got one, even though that was the biggest point of contention of our founding fathers, was whether or not to have a central bank. And most of them, including Jefferson, said no, because look what they've done in Europe.
Exactly.
Whoever controls the money, controls the government, controls the country. And this is the whole name of the game. And, of course, people hear that all the time. Alex and others are always talking about, well, the Occupy movement, you know, they're talking about the 1%. And, number one, this is now fully documented. This is not a conspiracy theory. In 2011, the Swiss Institute of Financial Control did a study, and they found out of 43,000 international corporations, they're all controlled by 1,000. And out of that 1,000, they are controlled by 147 companies, which in turn, because of cross-directorships and ownerships, are controlled by 20. And most of those are banks, okay? And collectively, these people within these 20 companies control the 43,000 corporations and 60% of the world's wealth. That is incredible control, and it is incredible tight central control. And this is what they're after. How do they do that? Well, I would mention the Exchange Stabilization Fund. How many people have heard of that? Nobody. And the Financial Stability Board. You ever heard of that?
I heard you talk about that last night.
Okay. All right. The Exchange Stabilization Fund was created back during the New Deal in the 30s, and it's a little-known office of the Secretary of the Treasury, and it handles the transfer of gold and wealth between all of the industrial nations. And interestingly enough, even at the time it was created, some of the complaints in Congress was that it would operate outside of U.S. law and outside the Constitution. And they also, this is where all the black budgets are hidden. The CIA, the NSA, when they have all this money, And, well, for instance, the CIA, we all know that they have front companies, airlines, restaurant strings, who knows. And some of those companies are not just totally bogus. They're actually companies, and they actually produce goods and services.
Legitimate businesses.
Legitimate businesses.
In some ways.
And they get tons of money. Where does that money go? Goes into the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and the Exchange Stabilization Fund also was the founder of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which we also have always heard how they go into these countries and say, now you're going to do this or we won't give you any money. This is the control mechanisms within the control of the entire planet, and this is what Alex is always talking about. And this is the point of contact. This is where the rubber hits the road, where they can actually do this. And if you go and look inside, you find Hank Paulson, you find Timothy Geithner, you find all of the people that end up in the headlines running our economy. So it's not just us. This is a worldwide system, and it's been planned for a long time, and they are operating their plan, and the idea is to get the whole world socialized. I'm
glad you say it's a worldwide system, because people don't see these things in Europe, they'll see it in Cyprus, wherever else it is, and they'll say, well, that's an isolated incident, that's that country, that'll never happen here. So when you hear this argument, it can never happen here, what would you say to somebody? Because they see the bank runs, they see the bank holidays.
Right.
You know, they can't withdraw their funds. So what would you say to somebody here in the States?
Well, I'd say, number one, not only can it happen, in fact, it could happen tomorrow, but it has happened. It happened during the Great Depression. Actually, I remember just a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was a bank in Seattle up in the Northwest was having problems, and they just closed the door. And people down there saying, hey, I want my money back. And they're going, well, not right now, you know. And it took them months, you know, for the federal receivers to take over and to finally settle out. And, you know, but that's one bank having one problem. They're all in trouble now, and they're all having trouble. And in Cyprus, for example, once they heard that they were going to try to tax these savings accounts, everybody rushed down and tried to close out their savings account.
Exactly.
They closed down the banks. Said, no, in fact, I don't think they're going to be open until next Thursday. Oh. Now, just think about what happens tomorrow if President Obama suddenly announces that we're going to have a bank holiday in the current crisis to try to straighten things out. And, you know, what's day? Friday. He said it's only going to last through next Wednesday. Okay?
Well, a lot of bills to pay between now and then.
It doesn't sound too bad on that point, but then think about it. That means until next Wednesday, you can't deposit money, you can't withdraw money, you can't use your ATM, and you can't use your credit cards.
Exactly.
This place would fall into chaos, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, especially you got that long weekend between... Oh, it would definitely
be a drab weekend.
So what would you recommend to somebody, not just here in the States, but anywhere? You know, they have the money in the bank. Would you recommend withdrawing funds?
Get your money out of the bank. You should only keep enough money in the bank to pay a month or two ahead in bills. And everything else, if it's in paper, then you're running a risk. And what would you do with it? I don't know. Some people say buy gold, but then, I don't know, you can't eat gold.
Yeah.
You know, I would say buy property, buy tangible assets, buy tomato seeds. You know, just anything, tangible assets.
Exactly.
They're trying to take guns away right now, but you know what? In the history of the world, a quality firearm has done nothing but appreciate in value.
We just saw that recently with the recent gun grab, you know, after the Sandy Hook shooting. And, you know, the price of an AR-15 was, what, $1,000, and what's it, 5,000 plus. AK-47s, you used to be able to get those maybe $400 or $500 back in the day. Now they'll start at $1,000.
Back in the day, I remember you could get those plastic 15, 30 round clips for the 1022 for $5 or $6, and then they tried to outlaw them, and you could still get them because it was grandfathered. So anyone that were already existing, you could still sell and trade. So it really didn't do anything. They were still available, but instead of $5 or $6, it went to more than $100. And folks, this is what happens all through history. The day before they passed the Volstead Act, which was
right here, Jim.
Which was prohibition, right? A little pint of hooch cost about $3, and then the next day after that became illegal, it was like $50 or $60. All in the world you do is create a huge black market, and the criminals get rich.
Now we hear the popular argument speaking about the gun grab. They say, well, we saw Feinstein, I believe it was last week, say, well, I don't want people to have guns because I don't want people to be able to go out and buy a bazooka. And my argument is, if you have bazookas, the lack of availability of a bazooka, or at least the ammunition for it, I think is reasonable control enough. You can't go to your big box store and buy, bazooka ammunition, or if you ask for it, they're going to call it ATF on you.
Right. And I'd ask you this. When's the last time you heard of somebody killed by a bazooka?
Not in the U.S. I can't recall ever hearing somebody.
People just don't get it. I mean, if strict gun control laws would actually rid the streets of crime, what happened to Chicago?
That's the case point in question, because they always say, get the guns off the street, get the guns off the street, and then they hear about all these shootings in Chicago, which there are shootings, but these aren't your law-abiding citizens who, accidentally shoot their dog when somebody breaks into their house. These are the criminals who never forfeited their guns. Right. These are the criminals who are getting their guns off the black market. So how does this logic work that you get guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands?
Well, and Chicago has some of the toughest anti-gun laws in the whole country. Same thing with Washington, D.C. So here's two of the places with the toughest gun laws, and they have the highest crime and highest murder rates. Come on, folks, use your head. It's that simple. It's nuts. And besides that, we have a Constitution that says the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. Infringed means you don't even mess around with it. And personally, I think it's a God-given right, because as the old quote goes, God created everyone equal, but Samuel Colt made them equal.
I never heard that. That's a good one.
Well, you got a 90-pound, 72-year-old woman. If she's got a 45, she's just as she can oppose.
6'5", 220.
Yeah, she can oppose the 6'5", 220 guy. It's really true. And then of course the argument is, well, yes, but we've had all these shootings here, all these shooting deaths in the United States. They're twisting the facts. Number one, their statistics are technically correct, but then they say, but see, Britain doesn't have that high. Well, no, Britain ain't got any guns. They gave them up.
Exactly.
And of course, so that's going to skew the numbers. But
and
over there, they kill with an axe or they'll stab you.
Exactly, but even in Britain, they have their crime statistics staggered a little differently. Like, for example, here in the U.S., let's say 3 people were shot in a drive-by shooting. That's 3 different incidents. If 3 people were shot by a drive-by shooting in Britain, that's 1 incident. Right. And the numbers are skewed and stacked in ways like that. But I don't want to spend all the time on that. No. Jim, you also have a new book.
Got a new book, Our Occulted History. Oh, boy, this is... Number one, this has got an explanation of the Exchange Stabilization Fund in there. It also quotes from the 2011 study to show that just this handful of people control the economy of the world. Basically, the whole back part of the book is the New World Order, and with the numbers, statistics, facts to show you that it goes beyond conspiracy theory. Now, my question that I bring up in here is, well, who are these folks? And why do they think they have the right to rule over everyone? And what I find is it tracks all the way back through history. What I was really shocked and amazed at is that in 2000, the selection of 2000, George W. Bush, of course, was running against Al Gore. And we now know that Al Gore won the election. All right, but they stopped the count in Florida, and the Supreme Court gave it to Bush. So that's the selection of 2000. But yet I knew that was going to happen, because there was some stories from England on this prestigious genealogical study, Burke's Peerage. And they said that Bush would get the presidency because although he and Gore were both related, and they were both related to the royal family of England, the Windsors, the Bushes were a little closer related. So he'd get it because in the history of the United States, every president that's the closest to the royals of England gets the nod.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because I hear this often, that, you know, all these guys are related, and Obama is supposedly related to Cheney or something like that. Can you explain a little bit about how that works?
Well, that's the thing that blew me away, is I knew that from 2000, and I knew that John Kerry, who ran against Bush in 2004, I knew that they were related. And they were both members of Skull and Bones and Secret Society, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm figuring, well, they're all keeping it in the family here. But then I thought, well, Barack Hussein Obama, how can he be related, right? It turns out he is. And this is not me, not some conspiracy theorist. This is Lynn Cheney, the wife of Dick Cheney, who said as she was researching their family's history, they found out that Obama is I think a 10th cousin. You know, wait a minute. I mean, are you related to the Windsors?
Not that I'm aware of.
And neither am I. We're not running for president, are we?
No, that's another good point. Now, do they select these people, or how do you get in the presidential race at that level? I mean, do they call you out, hey, I want you to run for president? Do you start out for president and you just get promoted if you're in the proper bloodline? Like, how does that work?
If you're in the proper bloodline, you are groomed and you are placed in that position. Bill Clinton seemed to be an exception. His background is pretty murky. We're not sure where he came from, and the person that they identify as his father is apparently kind of a nobody. So it was kind of like, wow, how did that happen? But then in my travels in Arkansas, I hear the rumor, and it's just a rumor, that actually he was the illegitimate son of Winthrop Rockefeller, who was governor of Arkansas and has been closely associated with the Clinton family. In fact, it was Bill Clinton that drove Hale Boggs to the airport on his flight that never came back. Hale Boggs being a politician from Arkansas who sat on the Warren Commission and was one of the ones who was beginning to dissent and say, he was thinking, I don't think we were told the truth, and I think maybe there was a conspiracy against John Kennedy. And he took a junket up to Alaska and never came back. Bill Clinton drove him to the airport. So Bill Clinton has been groomed. He was a Rhodes Scholar, right? Where do they find some poor kid in Arkansas and send him over to England to be a Rhodes Scholar?
That's a very
so they're groomed. And Barack Obama, you know, he goes to Columbia and enrolls as a foreign exchange student.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Wait a minute, because right there it's an either or. Either he was a foreign exchange student, which means he's not an American citizen, which raises up that whole question, or he is an American citizen, which means he lied and cheated and got his way in as a foreign exchange student. Either way, I think we got a problem there, and nobody seems willing or able to look into it.
Yeah, and you were talking about last night at the speech we went to in Bastrop, and you were saying if they want background checks for everybody, let's start with Barack Obama.
Amen. He wants background checks if you want to buy a gun. I said, okay, well, we'll start with him.
All right. Well, Jim, we're about out of time. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I think people need to understand that we're looking here, and I'm just confirming what Alex and a lot of others are saying, which is this is a plan that's unfolding, and the plan is to virtually destroy the sovereignty and freedom of the United States. It's really an incredible situation because we are told that we were attacked on September the 11th, 2001 by a terrorist who want to destroy our freedom and democracy.
And that's technically true.
Okay? Yeah. It is true. And they're winning. They are destroying our freedom and democracy. Unfortunately, I think you'll agree with me. It doesn't. When you peel away all of the pronouncements and all the flack and fluff, you find out it does not actually point to Middle Eastern terrorists, does it?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely terrorism. I'm just not saying it's the people they told us.
Oh, it's terrorists, but it's not those Arab Muslim terrorists. It's somebody else. And I don't think this is outside the realm of study and criticism and debate, because I can distinctly recall on the afternoon or evening of September the 11th, President Bush said essentially, I may be paraphrasing, but I'm close, he said we must not rest until we find out who's responsible for this and see that they're punished. So I'm just trying to do what my president said do.
Mission accomplished. We saw him standing in front of the big banner, mission accomplished and whatnot. Jim Mars, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
And that's it for our show. Definitely want to thank our guest, Mr. Jim Mars, and all the great reporters who were in this edition. So if you want to support this broadcast, go to prisonplanet.tv. Get yourself a 15-day free trial. You can see it all right there. The nightly news, the Alex Jones radio show, the movies, the rants, it's all right there. So I'm Jakari Jackson, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.